It's an immense pleasure for me to open the 2019 Kigali Investment Forum on Innovation and the Growth of Information and Communication Technologies in Africa. It's a theme which is dear to Africa 50, since ICT, along with energy, transport, and midstream gas, is one of our priority investment sectors. And what better place to hold this important event than in Rwanda, a country that has done so much to show that ICT investments are viable in Africa and that innovation can lead to a better future for our fellow Africans. And of course, the fact that His Excellency President Kagame has picked my good friend, Honorable Minister Paula Ingabire, to lead the sector is another reason why we are pleased to have this investment forum here in Rwanda. Indeed, ICT can help Africa leapfrog into the fourth industrial revolution. Africa 50 is delighted to be part of this process, helping its shareholders, countries like Rwanda, develop and finance groundbreaking projects. The Kigali Innovation City is a project that you will hear a bit more about later, but this is only the beginning. We have an exciting program today with opening remarks by a number of key players in Rwanda innovations ecosystem and a panel on how Rwanda has become one of Africa's most attractive investment destinations. We will also discuss innovation hubs, of which Kigali Innovation City is a great example, and have a panel on how to finance it all, especially connectivity infrastructure. I hope that this will be both an instructive and productive event. We have a great audience, of course, with a right mix of private and public senior executives. So let's create some new partnerships to speed up innovation and development of ICT sectors in both Rwanda, but also across our continent. With that, allow me to introduce my good friend, Ms. Claire Akamanzi, the CEO of Rwanda Development Board, which has been so important in the development of Rwanda, very great institution. And of course, RDB is Africa 50 key partners in the development and implementation of Kigali Innovation Project. So Claire, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ale. Good morning, everyone. Honorable Minister of ICT and Innovation, Honorable Ministers here present, Mr. Ale Ebobise, Diplomatic Corps, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I want to thank Africa 50 for bringing this conference to Rwanda. Some of you might know that at the Rwanda Development Board, we have a lot of indicators that we're measured upon. And some of you might also know that the government of Rwanda takes accountability really seriously. So one of the indicators that we're measured on is how many conferences we bring to the country a year, or how many meetings we bring in the country a year. So thank you very much for contributing to my performance this year. I want to give a very warm welcome to all of you. I noticed there's a number of people that have traveled from outside the country. I hope that you enjoy this meeting, but I also hope that you enjoy your experience living in our country. I want to just mention 5 things that I want you to remember if you don't remember anything else about doing business in Rwanda. We like to say that there are 5 main reasons anyone thinking of engaging Rwanda at a business level must do so. And I want to take you through those 5. First of all, if you're thinking about doing business in Rwanda, one thing that you should remember is that Rwanda is a stable country. Rwanda is stable. And when we talk about our stability, both in terms of safety, and the biggest indicator that I like in determining or demonstrating that Rwanda is a safe country is that there's a ranking that we have where Rwanda is ranked the 5th safest place for a woman to walk at night. I think if a woman is very safe to walk at night, it tells you many other aspects of safety in our country. And also, our stability is very much seen also on the fact that we have a zero tolerance of corruption. We take governance very seriously, and we make sure that our stability, both economically, governance-wise, among other indicators, are something that we can preserve and guarantee investors in the country. Number 2, Rwanda is growing. Rwanda is ever growing. Our economy has been growing between 7% and 8% for more than 2 decades, and that also guarantees you that by thinking about Rwanda and investing in Rwanda, you can be sure that you're partnering with a country that is going to grow and that you will grow with the country as well. Number 3, one of my favorites is that Rwanda works. We have this hashtag, for those of you on Twitter, that we like to post where we say Rwanda works, and we tell you many reasons why we think Rwanda works. But today Rwanda is ranked the 29th easiest place to do business in the world by the World Bank. We rank 2nd in Africa in the ease of doing business. And that also demonstrates in very many facets how we make sure that efficiency is at the core of what we do. We like to say that investors are here to create jobs and to produce whatever services and goods they want to. We don't want them to waste that time in red tape. We want them to use that time doing what their core business is. And so we always try to improve our investment climate, and today we rank 29th in the world. The 4th reason is that Rwanda is more than you see. It's not just the country, the size of the economy that you're betting with. We have taken integration very seriously. We're part of the East African community. We're part of COMESA. We are also obviously one of the first countries that signed the African CFTA, which was launched about 2 days ago. And now we can see the realization of a single African market within our site. And so when you're thinking about Rwanda, we want you to think about Rwanda, but to think about Rwanda beyond the borders of Rwanda, because our businesses are opening beyond our borders. The last reason that I want to share with you, as I welcome you to think about doing business in Rwanda, and as I welcome you to engaging with us throughout today to determine exactly how you can engage with our business environment, is that Rwanda is generally open for business, but we're also willing to bet with you. When you come to do business in Rwanda, we don't just let you go on your own. The Rwanda Development Board, which I lead, is tasked to just make sure your life is as easy as possible and your experience in investing in the country is as smooth as possible. But it's not just registering businesses. We'll tell you that it takes 6 hours to register business in Rwanda. We'll tell you that it takes 2 weeks to transfer property from one owner to another. All those indicators are important, and they've been guaranteed in form of laws. But more importantly, we're willing to bet with you and to structure deals with you. I'll give you a few examples. We signed a deal with a company from China called Pink Mango about a month ago. They were looking at investing in Rwanda in garments and textiles, but then the transport cost, because Rwanda is a landlocked country, was quite prohibitive. And so we had to think with them how we can address that problem. Obviously, we're not going to bring down the cost of cargo in a day, but we're able to find very creative ways to structure the deal and to structure some incentives for a transport company to be able to give them the price that was as competitive as Kenya, which is next to the sea. And so we sit down with you, we listen to what the challenges are, and we help to solve those problems with you. Drones. Rwanda was the first country to use drones to deliver blood. We had no laws or regulations to do that. Some countries actually turned down drone businesses because they didn't have regulations. But we sat down with the company and we understood what their needs were. We learned with them, we developed the regulations, we put in laws. We basically went through the learning process together with them. And that's how we think about investors. Sometimes we have to structure a deal specifically to meet the requirements of a specific investor or to address a particular challenge that they're facing when they're coming to invest in Rwanda. And with that, I hope that you see that indeed Rwanda is open for business. And most importantly, for today, we're open for discussions on anything that you're interested in. So thank you and welcome to Rwanda once again.
And I think Claire deserves another round of applause. She is the woman behind much of the development that you see in Rwanda. And when we talk about the ease of doing business and ranking 29 in the world, that in itself is an enormous accolade. So congratulations to you and your team, Claire. As I said earlier, our guest of honor is the Honorable Ms. Paula Ingebera. She's Minister of ICT and Innovation, the Republic of Rwanda. Please welcome her warmly to the stage.
Honorable ministers here present this morning, shareholders present, Mr. Ale Ebosis, the CEO of Africa 50, Claire Kamanzi, CEO of RDB. I'll stop at mentioning names. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. A very warm welcome to you all, to our beautiful country, and thank you for responding to the invitation for this investment forum hosted during the 4th Africa 50 General Shareholders Meeting. Our special gratitude goes to Africa 50 for accepting to host this exciting gathering that will give us a unique opportunity to discuss trade, investment, and partnership opportunities, which I believe reflects and demonstrates our shared vision and commitment to Africa's growth and development objectives. Ladies and gentlemen, the focus of this forum, which is taking advantage of investment opportunities offered by Rwanda's improving investment climate, resonates with our wider national development plans to increase investment through trade. Our economy is stable, growing above 7.5% per year, resilient and open to business in all sectors, producing goods and services. So today, in a way, I'm not only talking about ICT, I probably take Claire's role of talking about all sectors, but I'll make sure I have a niche focus on ICT at some point. In Rwanda, we've subscribed to the notion that the private sector is the engine for growth, especially when governments work closely with the private sector to foster a conducive environment, building skills, an ethic working culture, and that spurs our private sector and also entices foreign direct investment. Therefore, it goes without saying that governments alone cannot achieve this critical mission without the participation of the private sector in bringing the required investments, creating the necessary jobs that we need, but also leading innovation and driving productivity. Indeed, this requires combined effort of government, private sector, and partners such as Africa 50. And it's only fair to say that if we stay together, if we stay focused and we think big and work hard, then the rest will fall into place. Distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen, it is such partnerships that take a very strong political will and a capable private sector that have made Rwanda safe and secure, inclusive, transparent, and open to business. Along the way, we've had to cut down the red tape to become one of Africa's easiest places to do business and one of the fastest growing economies globally. These efforts have placed us on the 29th position in terms of ease of doing business globally, up from 41 from the previous year. In a similar manner, the government has invested in energy and infrastructure through the country to enable the private sector to operate in a conducive environment. Infrastructure is one of the critical enablers of socio-economic development, yet as a continent we still face high infrastructure deficits. However, part of the partnerships that we've been able to bring together between the government and partners like Africa 50 is our partnership with Africa 50 to deliver on building and nurturing a strong innovation ecosystem in Rwanda and eventually across the entire continent. This resonates with Rwanda's long-term vision of promoting innovation through this Kigali Innovation City flagship program. As a country, we've also pioneered the laying of countrywide broadband infrastructure that connects all our 30 districts and border points. And now we have at least 4G LTE covering over 90% of the population geographic coverage. We are linked globally through the national carrier, which is Rwandair, that flies to now 29 destinations, including the recently added destinations of China and Israel. The ongoing construction of our Bugesera International Airport is also a testament of the importance we place on connectivity, a critical factor of doing business with the rest of the world. Today, we'll get a glimpse into Rwanda's investment opportunities, and you'll notice that Rwanda has earmarked across different sectors, ICT and innovation, manufacturing, mining, tourism, agro-processing, and skills. More interestingly, however, is that Rwanda is now well positioned as a proof of concept country. If any of you has interacted with me, you'll know that when I talk about the proof of concept, I really get passionate about it. So we'll get a chance to go into details when the panel starts. But this notion of becoming a proof of concept country has, we've been able to bear some results where we've seen companies like Zipline, Claire was talking about the use of drones to deliver blood. And this was a true example of what being a proof of concept destination means. But of course, we are still short of where we want to be. So this is an opportunity today for us to engage and explore the various investment opportunities that are going to be presented to you. And I'm confident that we'll find these opportunities attractive and that Rwanda will offer you the right business climate to come in and invest. To conclude, I'd like to encourage each one of us to engage as we explore what Rwanda has to offer. And like Claire said, we're here to discuss and to listen so that we can make this environment more conducive for everyone. When I got into the room this morning, I was talking to a few people and I was asking them, is their first time in Rwanda? Have they enjoyed their stay? And they said yes, but we haven't gotten enough time to go around. So I hope, as much as we'd love to deliberate today, that we also create time for people to go out and experience what Rwanda has to offer beyond the deliberations. So I thank you, and I look forward to fruitful discussions.
Thank you very much, Minister, and we certainly do look forward to driving into our panel discussion in just a moment. Before we go there, we have a subject matter expert to launch our discussion on innovation hubs as a catalyst for Africa's innovation economy. She's got 3 minutes at the podium, after which I will invite our panelists up to the stage and we'll embark on an engaging conversation until 11:15. To remind you again that this is broadcasting live across the African continent. We are live to 48 countries across Africa, so it's way beyond this room, and that in itself is celebrating innovation. So without further ado, Natalie Munyampendwa, she is the Next Einstein Forum Managing Director. She's our subject matter expert. She's got 3 minutes at the podium to set the stage. Thank you. Natalie.
Okay, let me start by saying that I am not an Innovation Hubs expert, and today you will not get an Innovation Hubs powwow. So if you can go to the next slide, I wanted to focus on 3 main slides. The first is to say that if we continue at the rate that we're going, we are deindustrializing as a continent, and we are going to get millions and millions of young people who are unemployed. And that is an immediate danger and urgency that we have. Next slide. And the other big thing is that we are not investing in research and development. I know that this is an infrastructure group, but the gap that we have in skills today, based on the investments that we're currently making in research and development, is about 97%. So I'm here to give you some optimism, but also some realism. Next slide. So we do have some positive news, which is that we have growing number of hubs across the continent, and we have a lot of money that can be made, 60 trillion, that can come from just the digital economy and the kind of payment systems that we're looking at. Next slide. But I also want to say that there's a lot of focus on the digital economy, but there are many other opportunities, many other economies that Africa can tap in. The methanol economy, the economies, the hydrogen economy, which is one that we're studying closely where we work, as well as the carbon economy and many other economies in Africa. So the digital economy is just one of many economies that we can do that we can produce something for our people if we are investing. Next slide. Next slide, I'll skip that because of that. Next slide, please. I want to finish with this. So I was given 3 minutes. We tend to see innovation as kind of disconnected. Some people are working on infrastructure, physical infrastructure. Some people are working on digital infrastructure. Some people in countries like Rwanda have really leapfrogged in terms of the enabling environment necessary for innovation. What we don't see enough of is coordination that includes enabling technologies, but technologies that are created by Africans. That means talent. And because we do not see innovation as a process that requires these 5 pillars together, what we are seeing today is some acceleration, but we are not leapfrogging as the buzzword says. So I'm here to say today innovation hubs provide an environment that can tap into all of these environments or these pillars, but we need to today have a conscious effort as countries, as organizations, that we will be investing in areas that are not our field. So if we're working in infrastructure, in basic infrastructure, we will also have to look at who is investing and can I invest in digital infrastructure, in talent, in technology, in an enabling environment. And today we're provided that opportunity with the Africa Free Trade area. I want to thank you for your time, and I think we can go straight into the conversation. Maybe we leave that until we start the conversation. But today, if we do not view Africa in these 5 pillars, if we do not invest in the 5 together, if we do not create affiliation programs and consortiums that tap onto private sector money and governments that are pushing ahead, we will be left behind because we are already 97% behind in terms of what we need to be doing in research and development. And the immediate consequence is that we have 100 million people out of jobs, young people out of jobs by 2050. Thank you so much for your time.
Natalie Munyampenda, Next Einstein Forum Managing Director, the best 3 minutes of subject matter expert I've seen in a while. She's set the pace for our discussion. I'm going to ask you to come and join me on stage. I'm also going to ask the Honourable Minister of ICT and Innovation, the Republic of Rwanda, Ms. Paula Ingabire, to come up and join us on stage. Alain Ebobise, CEO, Africa 50, and Faith Keza, who is the CEO of Irembo, which was formerly Rwanda Online. I believe a huge branding exercise has just taken place, and our panel is on the stage. We're going to go straight into our discussion. Faith, as you take your seat, you're the only person we haven't heard from this morning. So we need to get your sense, and just to give you a sense of how quickly innovation is happening in Africa and specifically in Rwanda. In the morning briefing, I was chatting to Faith, and I had been looking at the website and picking up some stats around Irembo, which was actually Rwanda Online, and said, well, you know, you've got 80 government services that have been digitized, that are now online. She said, no, that's now 97. So the pace is fast, it's moving furiously. Give us a sense of what your mandate is now. As far as I understand it, you need to digitize basically all the government services in Rwanda.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for further helping with our rebranding exercise. People still walk up to me saying Rwanda Online, but that's okay. So a few years ago, 4 years ago, we joined the government of Rwanda in a 25-year partnership to digitize a lot of government. And I think that that's actually one of the key successes that Claire was highlighting about the kind of partnerships you can have between the private sector and government. And what we have done is look at digitizing government not as a project, but a product. And I think that that's one of the key issues that we've always had. Projects start and end, but when you're investing in technology, you need to keep fine-tuning, changing, adapting. And so our mandate really is to partner with the government and put as many government services online as possible, but we are realizing that that's something that we can't do alone, but we need partnerships. So we are trying to create open APIs where we can create some type of hub where Irembo is an open company that anybody can plug and play. We'll have a payment infrastructure, process management tool, and then you can really do your own sort of do-it-yourself sort of thing. And I think that that's actually what creates innovation hubs. When you have large companies, medium companies, and startups all partnering around the same problems and sharing resources and startups and business opportunities, then you can really leapfrog. Otherwise, you can't have one large company because you cannot find tech talent to poach from startups or that sort of thing, and you cannot get the small companies to have a business right away that you're paying them directly for.
And I think, Alain, this is a theme that we're going to drive hard on the discussion today, partnerships and leveraging development finance institutions, development platforms or finance platforms. And let's talk to Africa 50 and how you are really changing the game when it comes to investing and across the infrastructure board, but specifically here into innovation hubs, into digital infrastructure.
Okay, thank you, Browning. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the fact that I'm the only male panelist in this session, and this is also Rwanda, where gender balance, diversity is very important, and I think that's probably explain also the good results that we see
and
here.
I'm glad, Alain, that you made that reference. I didn't want to single you out on the panel.
But anyway, so look, I think the fact of the matter is that developing financial institutions should focus a bit more on the type of infrastructure that will enable innovation hubs. Clearly, we acknowledge that on our continent, given the big infrastructure gap that we have here in Africa, we are not going to be able to close the infrastructure gap by following the traditional infrastructure technologies. We need to find disruptive technologies to enable us to leapfrog to try to close the gap. One of those examples is in the power sector. I think we see that in the power sector, nobody today would argue that you need to build transmission lines to connect the entire continent. You need to have distributed generation, this kind of new technologies that would enable Africa to bridge the infrastructure gap faster. This is one of the reasons why we are focusing a bit more on innovation, and where at Africa 50, ICT, information communication technology, is one of the key sector of focus. Development financial institution can provide financing, but beyond financing, they can work on the other pillars of innovation ecosystem that Natalie mentioned earlier. Certainly focus a bit more on digital infrastructure. That we're going to finance. We have decided to partner with Minister Paula here and also Claire and their teams to develop Kigali Innovation City because we believe that it is very important to, and I'm going to paraphrase what Excellency President Kagame said, it's important to change this narrative of Africa as a continent which only consumes technology to one that actually creates technology. And for that, you need a number of things. First, we need to find a business-friendly environment. Rwanda has done great, but as Minister Paula said, still quite a bit of things to do to progress a bit more. You need to be able to attract both global companies but also local startups. We will do so. And building a pool of talents. This is very important to achieve a good mixed in innovation. And financial services. Having funds that could finance high-tech ventures is very important. And also, that could finance companies when they become a bit more mature, or at least in the growth phase. So having that financial service ecosystem that is accompanying the entrepreneurs that are thinking about doing new technologies. So the African Development Bank, for example, is supporting Rwanda here with a fund that will target high-tech companies. So DFIs can do many things, so I'm just going to focus on those. Hard infrastructure that are supporting the innovation ecosystem, digital infrastructure that are supporting the ecosystem, and a number of advice that they can work with governments to basically to improve the enabling environment and so on and so forth. I can go a bit more.
I'm going to jump in there. I'm going to come back to you though, don't worry, Alain, and thank you again for setting the pace of our discussion. Minister, leveraging off what your speech had earlier in terms of content, I think it's very important to focus on the ease of doing business. We've both mentioned that number of times following on Claire Akamanzi's presentation, that Rwanda is the 29th easiest destination to do business in globally. And if we bring it back to the topic at hand, which is really how innovation hubs can change the game, I'd like to get a sense from you in terms of your experience prior to becoming Minister of ICT and Innovation. You were CEO of the City of Kigali Innovation Center, is that correct? Just to understand how that catapulted Rwanda's growth from around about 40th position to now 29.
Thank you. And maybe I need to correct, I probably wasn't CEO, but was leading the efforts of
leading
the
efforts.
Yes, of the Kigali Innovation City, because at that point we were still in the process of operationalizing the Kigali Innovation City Corporation Limited. But back to that, I think for us it's been a journey of a couple of years where we looked at innovation hubs initially as, having this physical space where you bring together talented people, they engage and connect and co-create some of the solutions. And then quickly, maybe a few years down the road, we realized that actually we needed to change strategy, because our hugest emphasis had been on how do we put in place massive infrastructure so that we can bring in all these foreign companies to collaborate with local companies and build solutions for Africa. And then we quickly realized that that wasn't the best strategy, because you could have all these beautiful buildings up and running, but then if you don't have the people that are going to be in that building, you don't have the talent, you haven't created that critical mass of talent, people that are creating solutions that respond to actual needs, then we wouldn't count that as a success in terms of building an innovation ecosystem here in Rwanda. And so we had to look at about 3 different ways of segmenting the project, and one of it was real estate, looking at the infrastructure that is required, and this is where we started to partner with Africa 50, really fleshing out the details of what kind of real estate infrastructure do we need to sort of bring together this ecosystem. But beyond that, we started looking at other ways of partnering with Africa 50, and the other component of the project was around talent development. How do we build that human capital that is required for people to, whether from across Africa, to come and use Rwanda as their entry point into the continent as they create solutions for the continent. And then the third element was on building the industry synergies between foreign companies and local companies. And then the last element, which was also very critical, was also thinking, what does it take to scale businesses beyond the improved doing business environment that Rwanda has been able to chart out for the private sector, what else is required to scale technology businesses? And realize that financing was a key impediment to that growth, because the banks and financial institutions locally were more targeted towards financing traditional industry. And so the innovation sector, which happens to have many young entrepreneurs, when they go to a bank and they're asked for collateral, they have nothing to put on the table. And so we quickly realized that we needed to start thinking about having innovation-friendly financing in the system for us to be able to grow and scale innovation-driven enterprises. And so those are the 4 components that make our, the efforts that we're putting together to build and nurture an innovation ecosystem.
Natalie, if we can bring you in here, you're leading the scientific agenda across the African continent and throwing forward to the Science and Innovation Conference that you will be holding in March 2020 in Nairobi, still within the East African context. Talk to me about other innovation hubs and the changes that you've seen them make to the economies with which they are placed.
I think we're seeing we are seeing many innovation hubs, and I would even say ecosystems beyond just innovation hubs. And I think that's the point of my presentation was to show that innovation hubs come in to plug and play when there's an environment that allows it to prosper. And I think going from just having innovation hubs by name, but seeing companies, technologies that can be scaled up become industries that bring in employment, which is also a very important part. We are not seeing enough of startups creating large-scale employment. So we have to, as the minister was saying, we have to really think through, and I want to commend the government of Rwanda for that, for thinking through what are all the elements we need to be able to have an innovation city that creates long-term industries and employment, and what do we need to do? And as you can see, people who go to startups or innovators who go to innovation hubs are at very different scales. You have someone who's coming to figure out their idea to prove their concept. There are others who are coming in because they've proven their concept and they're looking for financing, or they're looking for research and development, they're looking for different things. And so what we need to do today is to have a more, if we're thinking of from the Africa 50 perspective, we need to really look at, as Faith was saying, innovation, or at least those who are doing research, when they are looking to scale up ideas, they need that freedom to be able to test out ideas, fail quickly, try up some ideas, use their idea for another industry. And that requires an innovation ecosystem where they can pull from researchers, they can pull from engineers, they can pull from financing, they can pull from people who allow them to fail. And in Africa, we do not yet have that environment, even though we use the buzzwords. We do not yet have that environment where people will say, I'm going to invest a fund that does this specifically, that allows people to draw money, prove their concept, maybe fail, draw some more money. That doesn't exist, and the banks are not going to be there. So we need some gaps, organizations and funds that will be that stopgap so that startups can actually flourish. The second thing I was going to say is that a lot of what we're missing in Africa is tech transfer. So we run centers of excellence across Africa, and we graduate master's and PhD students in machine learning, in AI, as well as mathematical sciences, which is the foundation of all technology. And what we find is that our students are scientists. They're not trained, they're not business development people, they're not bankers, they don't know how to do a business plan. And so what we need to do is strengthen, not just for our own centers of excellence, what we're doing now is creating tech transfer offices, but we need to strengthen tech transfer offices across Africa. We see that in South Africa, it's just starting, where you allow students who already have the technological background to be able to start companies and scale up, and that's what created Silicon Valley. And so if we are trying to become Silicon Valley, we have to fix that gap.
Faith, talk to me about the challenges that you experience and how we can plug those gaps very quickly, utilizing the strength of this panel.
Thank you. I think it's been touched upon multiple times, but I think that the largest gap is the tech talent gap. Especially you want people that have startup experience and not just programming, but product management, business development, go-to-market strategy, and the whole thing. And I'll give you...
So this is clearly lack of skills.
Yes, but now a potential solution is that we can take the long route with investing in education for the next 10 to 15 years, and in 20 years, one African city might be on the top 20 hub ecosystem. Another potential solution is to open up Africa, which we've already started to do, not just for other Africans, but really for global talent to move here easily and start to work. And not just visas on arrivals and free work permits, but also real incentives, equity in what we're doing, equity in Africa, because this is the future in many ways. So I think this is how we can balance developing today and then also invest in developing tomorrow with our own local talent. But we need to pair people together, and this is kind of the area I see opportunity in.
So, Alan, I think it's fitting if we follow from what Faith has put on the table is that we are opening up Africa. It was mentioned earlier that the free trade continent trade area has been, is in operation effectively now. Two days ago, we got the go-ahead. It's now blazing ahead. How's that going to change up the game? Because leveraging the regional and creating this continent-wide $3.3 trillion economy would actually gives us the largest economy in the world if we do manage to open it up across people, goods and services. How is that going to help in terms of really putting us on the global stage?
Yeah, no, I think it's a very important point. I'd like to build on what Faith said. And Rwanda is also showing an example, although there's still work that needs to be done, in terms of allowing the free flow of people, talent, to come and help build this continent. And I think this is so important. And the way we are helping on our side at Africa 50, we are not necessarily funding education programs, although our sister organization, the African Development Bank, is doing so. But I think DFI should focus on that, building talent, but also advising government to make sure that they're able to attract a bit more people. Now, what we are doing, which will enable the African Continental Free Trade Area to work a bit better, we are working on building infrastructure that will connect countries. It could be ICT infrastructure, cables, that are continental-wide cable, but also we have a flagship project that we are doing today, which is a key link that are connecting two countries in Africa, but also that will be a link to connect many other countries. This is the Two Congo Bridge project, where you're connecting two countries. So connectivity is really the name of the game, to make sure that you have infrastructure that allows this continent to really to function as one single entity. This is so important because that will also give incentive to global companies to come here, and because they will see the big market. So totally agree with what Faith said. Now, we at Africa 50 are focused on that. We, of course, cannot do everything. We have to focus on some sectors. But I can tell you that the sense that innovation, ICT infrastructure is so important almost forced us to move slightly towards a zone that we hadn't targeted before, which is digital infrastructure, a bit more ICT. We're going to be big on broadband. We're going to make sure that we increase substantially the penetration rate of broadband in Africa. You cannot think about the fourth industrial revolution if you don't have internet access, which is almost universal. So that is one piece that we're going to push very hard. A final point, this is very important. We are deploying, that's what we're doing in Kigali Innovation City project together with the minister here and Claire and their teams, early stage risk capital to work with government entities and others to develop those innovations, well, in this case, Kigali Innovation City, but to come in the early stage, instead of saying to government, please go ahead and develop this thing, and then we come later once you've proved the concept. We want to be part of proving that concept, and we're taking the risk, and this is one of the things that Africa 50 can do.
The vision, Minister, for Innovation City. Can you put that on the table for me?
The vision of the Innovation City is about twofold. So first, I think part of Natalie's presentation showed us where we have more than 440 innovation hubs across Africa. And interestingly, every country you're going to visit on the continent is going to tell you one of their vision is to become an IT hub or an innovation hub for the continent. It's not a bad thing. It's actually a very good thing, because at the end of the day, the continent is large, and what for us, the vision that we have for KIC is how do we create the linkages between all these innovation hubs so that we are co-creating some of these solutions that respond to challenges that are similar across the continent. So for example, if we're talking about fixing the issue of quality education or quality healthcare, something that will work in one part of the continent is most likely going to work in another part of the continent with just a little bit of customization to what the user needs and look like. And so for us, as the Kigali Innovation City, which by the way we're already thinking about rebranding because we felt like Kigali Innovation City was limiting in a way because it almost focuses on just Kigali, was to say, how do we become the hub that connects all the hubs across the continent so that we're able to attract the talent from across Africa to come and do their proof of concept work here, test their solutions and products with our 13 million market, then scale to the rest of the continent. So that's very important for us as we create that vision. The other thing, and I wanted to very quickly and briefly respond to part of what you asked, Faith, is as much as talent is a big gap for us as a continent, I think we look at talent in many ways. There's talent from the supply side, the type of innovators that are going to be creating solutions, but there's also digital literacy on the demand side, the type of people that are going to be consuming these products. And so as much as the continent still has very low literacy levels, we're also keen to see how we can push up the digital literacy levels, because the more we push services to people, digital services to people, and they cannot be able to transact on their own, they'll need third-party support, then there's also a risk of exposing some of this data to third parties. And so when we look at talent, especially for the case of Rwanda, we look at it as a pyramid where at the bottom of the pyramid we're looking at digital literacy for the entire population, and then at the top of the pyramid where we're looking at high professional skills, where you're looking at software developers and all these other innovators that are going to create these products and solutions. And so back to your question around the vision, really it's how do we create the linkages, how do we become the hub that links all the different hubs across the continent, where each hub is specializing on the strength of that community in which they are, but in a way where we're able to create solutions that can be scaled to the rest of the continent.
Faith, while we are on the theme of solutions, you see how the conversations are moving in Africa. Now we don't worry about the problems of the past, we talk about what is working. And from your perspective, I want to get a sense of what can be replicated, in your opinion. If we're looking at innovation hubs across the continent, what is the most effective way of, and I use the term, leapfrogging?
The biggest thing for me is to be innovative in terms of financial instruments. So one of the things that can be replicated is being innovative in how we finance these innovation hubs. What do we need in terms of financing to be able to finance some of our internal projects? So thinking through, where do we bring in the private sector? Do we have a consortium? Do we do an affiliation program to be able to say, we are going to put a little bit of money on the side that innovators, that researchers can tap into with a certain number of criteria, like we see in the EU, to be able to develop large-scale industries? Because today, a lot of the jobs that we will have in 2030 don't exist. So I want to come back to what Alain was saying, is it's not one or the other. It's not digital infrastructure or basic infrastructure. Once you have digital infrastructure, you still need to be able to transport goods across countries. So we do need basic infrastructure. I think the time of having one or the other is over. We really need to think in a framework setting, and governments and the private sector need to say, where do we come in within here? Even academic institutions, we can no longer say we'll be in our bubble, produce our publications, and thank you so much for giving me funding. Today we have to be thinking about where do we fit in and what can we bring. But the innovation hubs have the opportunity today, if we create the infrastructure, because a lot of the time startups need internet, they need a place to work, they need an address, they need business cards, but they also need research and development. And sometimes it requires the government to say, hey, have you tapped into there? If you want this funding, you need to go get some research people to come on with you. And pushing people to work together. I think this is the challenge and also the opportunity.
Removing silo mentalities and collaboration is the key here. Faith, how are you as a Rembo working with private sector to, again, come back and solve those challenges that you are being presented with?
I think we do partner with different firms across what we do. We partner with front-end firms that do USSD for us. We partner with payment providers that do payments for us, and third-party providers that help citizens apply, those who can't, and non-rural. But I still feel like our partnership is just at the beginning, and this is something that we need to invest in moving forward. As I mentioned, we want to open up our platform so that people can plug and play. What that means is potentially very technical, but it means we do not have to replicate anything that we've already done. And maybe we don't have to replicate anything you've already done. How can we create these synergies and technologies that can help us both move faster? And I think this is going to happen more as we have an innovation culture. Like, for example, I just moved recently back from California, but pub talk in California, when you go out with friends to a bar, is, oh my God, what algorithm is it going to take to fix this and that? This is the problem I have at work. So how do we make that very open, where we're all very open about the problems that we are working on, and then also the potential solutions that we're finding in our various companies? And I think having a medium to really share, and various meetups focus on different things, fintech, e-health, e-gov, that is going to help the collaboration. And obviously, someone's going to have to take the lead, and or we can all take the lead. But I think next year, once we start to create technologies that other people can consume, then we'll be more likely to go out there to evangelize our technology. So I think that's our path.
Staying with this theme of collaboration, Ale, talk to us about Africa 50 and how you are nurturing or helping to drive public-private partnerships when it comes to infrastructure rollout across the board, both the soft and hard infrastructure.
Yeah, we do a lot of hard infrastructure, and I'm very happy that Natalie said what, of course, it's true that you need this hard infrastructure in addition to the other stuff. So the continent still has a big gap. So we're financing a lot of hard infrastructure. But I'd like to focus on one initiative that we have launched in the innovation space. It's called the ICT Innovation Challenge of Africa 50. We've identified the last mile connectivity, internet connectivity, as one of the issues, the problems that we have here on the continent. And we decided that we're going to tackle this issue. And so we are launching a global challenge. We are asking all the innovators, experts in the world to propose solutions to help us address this last mile connectivity. And guess where we are applying, we are doing the proof of concept? Rwanda. So Rwanda is this country where they said, look, quite interesting idea, come here and let's test this thing and see how it works. And the best solutions will be funded, and then hopefully we hope it will work, and then we can roll it out across Africa. This is one of the ways where we're trying to solve an important issue that we're facing in the continent. So we are about building hard infrastructure. We are funding a lot of power projects. I mean, I can give examples. 400 megawatt that we funded in a solar project. We funded in Egypt, 120 megawatt in Senegal, etc., etc. But we are also venturing into the innovation space, which is not the core activity of Africa 50, but we believe that for Africa to leapfrog in terms of closing the infrastructure gap, I think we need to find disruptive technologies that would enable us to leapfrog to close the infrastructure gap.
Minister, I want to come back to you. You spoke about the rebranding of Kigali Innovation City, perhaps on the cards down the line, because you want to play a strategic role across the continent. And perhaps let's just take a step back and talk about the strategic role that Rwanda's innovation culture has played across the East African community. And because we've seen it translates directly into economic numbers, and we're seeing the East African community as one of the highest growth territories across the African continent. And I think a lot of that is due to the collaboration.
A couple of things that I'll start off with the question around the type of collaboration that is happening at the East African level, and very specifically when we look at the Northern Corridor, where we have a number of countries that have come together, and essentially what we do is to think through what are some of those key technology or ICT type of projects that could benefit us as a community. And the very first objective or output of this kind of partnership that we had was having our different fiber backbone networks interconnecting. I think that was the very first success story, where we're looking at a one area network infrastructure project that helps us to interconnect, but also to reduce on the roaming charges and costs of interconnecting within the region. Then the other element was also thinking through and saying, each of these countries has a very strong focus on things they want to do when it comes to the tech sector. How do we work together to empower each country so that we're able to deliver on a project that really supports us? So, for example, Kenya is leading on putting in place a single digital market that we are going to benefit from together as a region. And then Rwanda is going to be leading on having it's a cybersecurity center that's more around safeguarding information and infrastructure assets, but that's coupled also with having data center facilities here in Rwanda. And so this is just an example of what the different flagship projects the countries were having. And maybe now that we're talking about the East African region, we should also talk about Smart Africa, which is a much broader umbrella organization that looks at around 27 countries, bringing us from across the continent. And the idea is that in implementing some of these flagship initiatives that each country is leading on, we are able to issue blueprints that help each other in implementing similar projects and really shortening the period of implementation and getting the impact. But more in response to your question around partnerships and collaboration, I think we're a country that has greatly benefited from really having this kind of partnerships. Faith and Ale did touch on some of the private sector partnerships we have with development partners. We have the Africa Development Bank that is in the room where they are working with us. I did talk about earlier about innovation-friendly financing. They've been very instrumental in helping us to put together a Rwanda Innovation Fund that is going to be there not just for Rwanda, but it's going to support the different innovators across the continent to build innovative solutions. Today, we are in discussion with the EU in putting in place seed financing, because what the African Development Bank is targeting is more around growth stage financing. And so really tapping into what the expertise and resources that other partners have and creating that win-win type of collaboration. And then when you look at the private sector, really without going into so many details, you have the likes of Urembo that has been, the government has partnered with them so that they digitize all the services. You have Zipline that is providing blood products and other medical products over time to the different healthcare facilities. You have the Volkswagen that are doing the mobility solutions for Rwanda. So there are a number of initiatives when it comes to how we partner with the private sector, which are more around a PPP framework. Now we are moving away from simply looking at PPP type of engagements to now thinking about what can we do as a government for us to have confidence in the solutions that the private sector is creating, and we are the first consumers. Rather than procuring foreign solutions, how do we empower our local private sector whose capabilities we're investing in so that we can be the consumers of the products that they are bringing to market? And so these are different forms of partnerships, and the last component of partnerships and collaboration that we look at is more around communities. I did talk about digital literacy. You cannot achieve digital literacy if you're going to work with simply the private sector. Communities have to buy into this notion to understand why digital literacy is important for them, why it's important that they start to see them in this futuristic digital economy that we are creating for them. And so we've created models where we have community leaders come in, we train them, and they become trainers of trainers in really upskilling people to really use and embrace digital technologies across the board. So that was just to give you a scale of the kind of collaborations that we have as a government. But then even moving on as we think about rebranding and becoming that hub that interconnects all the other hubs, really thinking through what does it take for Rwanda to create a Pan-African ecosystem of innovation hubs across the board.
And let's pick up there on what the Minister is saying for Rwanda to create a Pan-African innovation hub for the continent, and add that together with the stat that I put on the table earlier, this $3.3 trillion economy that we're looking at with the opening up of borders across the African continent. What, Natalie, in your opinion, is the vision for Africa? Where do you think we can play on the global stage if we really embrace this innovation culture?
I absolutely think that the digital economy provides Africa the market of the future. I think in terms of the adoption, even though we have many challenges, infrastructure being a big one, both basic and digital, Africa is really a place where you can test out your ideas, scale up, and it has an immediate effect on the population if it is able to create employment, which I again want to emphasize. I think
because there's this great opportunity, we do absolutely need to accelerate our efforts to collaborate around the framework, so people working along the 5 pillars, to look at where are we going in the future. So the Rwanda did an exercise of a proof of concept and said we want to go into these 3 industries. And when you do and identify these 3 industries, then you have to align and say, what skills do we need here? What infrastructure, basic infrastructure do we need here? What digital infrastructure do we need here? And I think we need to get out of this. So I don't use the word leapfrog ever, because I think that we tend to get cornered by buzzwords, and we just need to step away from buzzwords and actually start doing things, even if we fail. Obviously, we don't have a lot of money to fail, which is very different than Silicon Valley. But we really need to start working seriously on projects and saying, let's try this out. What does it look like to create a consortium around the digital economy in the agro sector? Who can we invite to this? There's academic institutions, there's research institutions, there's startups, there's financing instruments, there's infrastructure. Now, what do we need to do? What is the projects that we're financing, and where are we getting this money? Because what the problem is, we have great ideas, and everybody, because we're all getting financing from the same people, we're all saying, okay, I will lead this. But one of the reasons I really think that the Kigali Innovation City has a chance to be an example is that they're willing to let other people lead other parts, as long as we're able to create this ecosystem that in the end creates jobs. And I want to talk about upskilling just to end. I think because I come from a scientific PhD postdoc researcher level, I want to also talk about the need to canalize our students into the areas that so if we identify agriculture, if we identify health, are we producing the kind of skills, whether it's downstream or upstream, that are going to be able to drive our vision? And today the problem is we only remember the academic or skills at the very end. And so then we've created instruments, we've created an environment, we have now the financing instruments, we now have the startup environment, and we have no one to work in these areas. And I don't just mean the scientists, but I mean the lab technicians, I mean the process engineers. So we really have to think from the very beginning and exercise on the 5 pillars. Where are we and what do we need to invest? And this is not just for Rwanda, and I think maybe because Rwanda will become sort of the hub for other hubs, this will be a useful exercise, and I think that the investing in it early is a good...
So I don't like buzzwords either, and I know that we use that leapfrogging too often, especially at the World...
We shouldn't leapfrog infrastructure. That's what was my point.
The World Economic Forum platforms, but I'm going to throw it back to you as an academic, and I'm going to say, right, if we do embrace our innovation culture and we really are firing on all cylinders, we're not only going to catch up to many of the developed world players. What are we going to do? Give me another word for leapfrog.
So I think the whole point of saying there's a lot of industries and jobs that don't exist. And so I think we shouldn't be necessarily trying to catch up. We should be looking forward.
Exactly. I'm saying we're not. It's
yes.
beyond catch up. I'm
so our
industries. Natalie, I'm throwing it back to you. I'm playing on. I want another word from the academic on this stage. Come, let's coin an academic phrase.
If we tap into all cylinders of innovation, we will be leading the future of industry.
Leading the future of industry. I like it. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to go back to the topic at hand. Innovation hubs as catalysts of Africa's innovation economy. We have one round left in terms of statements across the panel, and I certainly don't want you to walk off the stage and think, I wasn't asked the right question. So this is your opportunity. If I have left out anything that is a burning issue that you feel should be addressed at this stage, speak now or forever hold your peace. So, innovation hubs as catalysts of Africa's innovation economy. Faith.
Well, I don't like to go first, but I'll try. I think perhaps what we didn't touch on might be creating African stories. We need to find 1, 2, 3, 5 great Africans who've done something in this space, in the future economy, and celebrate them and create a myth around them. Because in most other parts of the world that have leapfrogged, you started with the old school Bill Gates, and then you have a new generation, and so on and so forth. The same happens in other ecosystems, but I think in Africa we need to start marketing our success stories. Who are the innovators? Let's name them by name, and let's say, well, you started this company that's gone on to be, I don't know, invested in, and let's celebrate wealth as well. someone needs to make money if Africa is the future, right? So is it foreign investors that are buying all the equity and driving the vision and getting the returns, or are we enabling our entrepreneurs to be better negotiators and structure better businesses so that they can be the success stories of tomorrow? So let's find stories and market them and repeat them in these conferences so that we can have people to point to. In Rwanda, I can name a couple. There is Clarisse Iribagiza, who is a great model for young women. There is Patrick at AC Group, who's also doing great work in transportation. And we need to name more people, and we need to have them top of mind.
I think it's great that you're starting to name them right here on this platform. Alain.
Well, Brody, thank you. I think we spoke about many things, but I'm going to finish with what we do best at Africa 50, and which is part of the 5 pillars that Natalie mentioned as needed collectively to have great innovation hubs, innovation cities. This is basic infrastructure and digital infrastructure. This is still needed. And Africa 50 will focus massively in investing in that to bridge that infrastructure gap on the continent, which is so massive. We are not going to talk about innovation hubs if we cannot supply power or if we cannot give broadband access. So that's the core focus of Africa 50. We will do that. We will do that very quickly. And selectively, we will partner with some government shareholders like Rwanda to venture into innovation cities or other type of pillars in the 5 pillars that Natalie mentioned. But our core focus will continue to be on building the basic and the digital infrastructure, and Africa 50 will do that.
Minister Ingaberi.
For me, it's a question of back to the theme of the panel, which is innovation hubs as catalysts for innovation or socio-economic development. If we could take a step back and even think how many of these innovation hubs are producing products or services or solutions that have been transformative. Is it just 10%? Is it just 5%? Because if it's just such a small percentage, then innovation hubs are not being catalysts. And then also thinking and saying, what does it take to have these innovation hubs as strong drivers of socio-economic development? And this will actually change the way we look at innovation hubs or the way we measure success of the innovation hubs. One of the things that we kept discussing with different people in the industry was, do we need so many innovation hubs? I would say absolutely yes, because you need to have so many innovators within the economy. But then the question then becomes, what kind of support functions or facilities do you put in place to nurture more innovators to come through? And yes, a lot of concentration is around shared space, is around a bit of financing, whether it's seed financing or growth stage financing, a bit of connectivity, so you have high-speed internet. So it just becomes a space where you can connect and engage. But then if we're missing mentors, which is really critical to actually, one, having solutions that respond to actual needs that exist, but two, also having mentors, people that have started a business, even failed. Sometimes you need to listen to these failures and know what not to do. And I feel like when we talk about innovation hubs, mentorship becomes a strong element that lacks largely, and then there's a very big disconnect between what is coming out and how much it's driving socio-economic development. The other thing I wanted to touch on that Natalie talked about, yes, we don't have many resources to waste, but I think we need to find a model for Africa where we celebrate failure, where we encourage people to try and fail, but then pick up quickly and start something else. Once we do that, then we start to see more and more solutions coming out, as opposed to people waiting until they have the right ingredients in place before they can think of a business idea.
And Natalie, as subject matter expert, you had the first word. You set the stage perfectly for the discussion, and you have the last word.
I wanted to say that we need to build the talent we're looking for, and that to do that we have to have a vision to drive the need for building talent. I want to say that I know if we want to name some more large scale, I used one in my slides, InTouch. InTouch is based out of Senegal. There's so many large entrepreneurs. I wouldn't even call them entrepreneurs anymore. They're large businesses. And one of the problems, they'll tell you immediately that the first people to not finance them is African private sector. And so they'll have to go, so InTouch, for example, is financed by Total and Orange and other French investors. So we really need to be beyond just naming our heroes who have been able to make it in the market, scale up to 15 countries, is also to say, why are we not, as a private sector, investing in these startups? Why are we taking foreign equity? Why are other investors, and this is not going to drive Africa for leading the future. And also we have to, as we said, create instruments that allow us to be very innovative in where we finance along the value chain. And that infrastructure, digital or basic, is critical, and that's why I'm happy to be here. Let me end by saying that we cannot expect the other part of the framework to do our work for us. So for example, we always get asked, your scientist came to us and he's a data scientist and he can fix my problem, but I don't understand it. So I have actually had to take AI courses to be able to understand what these scientists are telling me. So we have a responsibility to be able to figure out I need this part of the framework, how do I get knowledge and how do I invest in this part?
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our panelists, Faith, Alain, Minister Ingabire, and Natalie. I'm going to ask you to stand down from the stage. Thank you very much.